Hello, my name is Devin Jamroz with SteepFuze CBD Coffee and Tea, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to make a delicious CBD-infused pour-over coffee in a Chemex. Now, the Chemex itself is a pretty simple, elegant hourglass brewer, beloved by baristas, coffee aficionados, and pretentious coffee snobs alike. But I'm not going to be using a Chemex filter today. The heavy, more fibrous pulp filters are really good for removing the oils from a coffee, producing a nice light, crisp cup. But with an infused coffee, you want to make sure that those oils, that hemp extract, actually makes it into your cup instead of getting trapped in the filter. So today I'm going to be using an Osaka steel mesh filter to make this coffee. Then I've also got my gooseneck kettle, a scale with a built-in timer, my cup of course, and my beans. This is our single origin Sidamo coffee from the motherland of coffee itself, a really nice, bright, fruity, crisp coffee. I'm going to be brewing 3 cups of coffee today, and I like to use about 15 grams per cup, so 45 grams of coffee. Perfect. And then we recommend starting at about a 15-to-1 ratio of water to coffee beans. So for 45 grams, I'm going to be using 675 grams of water. And we always recommend using fresh ground coffee, starting with a whole bean and grinding it right before you brew. The reason being, when coffee's in its whole bean form, it has a lot of CO2 in it, and that CO2 slowly releases and creates a natural oxygen barrier around the beans, which prevents staling. But when you grind the coffee, the staling process starts right away. So if you have pre-ground coffee, you're always going to get a little bit of staling, and fresh ground is always going to produce the best coffee. We also recommend always using a burr grinder because you're going to get a much more consistent grind for a much more consistent brew. It's just going to make better coffee. Go ahead and zero out the scale. And I always recommend reweighing the grinds. With a burr grinder, sometimes grounds tend to get caught up in there, so just reweigh to make sure you've got the same amount. Gonna zero it out again, and then just give it a little bit of a shake. And now with the grounds, Chemex generally recommends that you use a medium coarse grind for ideal extraction through their filters, but since I'm using the Osaka, that's gonna have a much higher flow rate because of the loose mesh, so we recommend using a slightly finer grind, more like coarse sand, so a medium fine grind there. So now I'm going to actually start my brew, and the first thing that I'm going to do is the bloom. And when the bloom is, I'm going to use about 2-to-1 ratio of water to grounds to heat up the coffee and heat up the gases inside, and a lot of that remaining CO2 is going to release, and that's going to puff up the grounds. It's going to eliminate any dry spots. It's going to help for a really nice, even brew. It's also going to be releasing a lot of the most delicate flavors and aromas. So here we go. Start the timer. I'm going to start right in the center, swirling outwards, paying attention to my weight, getting all the grinds evenly wet. And there we go. Oh, it smells like blueberries. And even though it looks like and smells like a nice blueberry muffin, don't eat it. There's a lot of ways to enjoy coffee, but this is not one of them. And we're going to let this sit for about 30 seconds. Let some of that water flow through. We're right there. And now I'm going to do my first pour. And on the first pour, I'm going to start in the center, spiraling outwards. I start in the center because that's where the grounds are the deepest. And I'm going to pour about half the remaining weight, so about 300 to 325 grams. All right. And there we have it. Now, if I've done this just right, you should be finishing up your first pour at about 1:30 when that'll finish dripping and you can start your second pour. And if you haven't timed that just right, if you're a little behind, you might want to use a coarser grind to let it flow through faster. If you want to slow it down, use a finer grind. And on the second pour, I start from the outside, working my way in. To wash those grounds off the side back into the slurry, and then go back into that swirling motion to bring it right up to the 675 grams. And there we go. And then another good way to gauge how your pour over is going is to pay attention to your flow rate, and that's the rate at which your water is actually coming through the grounds into the beaker. And you want a nice single stream that's slow but steady, and this is where you can gauge how your grind size is. And we are coming up on 4 minutes. Now during this process, some of the different flavor elements are going to extract at different times. More of your lighter aromatic compounds first, some of your heavier flavor elements later. So just go ahead and give that a little swirl. Mix it all up. And then you have got a delicious CBD infused pour over coffee. Cheers. Oh yeah, that's good.